Will we see new all-time highs in the S&P and in the NASDAQ 100? We need to talk about it. I am Dr. Stock, Doctor of Education. And do you know what a paint roller and what I want have in common? A nap. I was probably stretching for that one, but I am feeling a little bit tired. We'll call it hashtag dad life in this one. So I know it doesn't have anything on hashtag mom life, but we'll see. Moving over into the markets here. SPY. We are in the pre-market hours at 521. The all-time high that we saw for SPY as it tracks the S&P 500 is $524.61 set back on March the 28th. We are about 0.5% at this point in time, 0.5 to 0.75% away from that all-time high as of the pre-market. So moving over into the Qs, where are we? We're like between 1% and 2% away from that all-time high. Set on March the 21st is where we peaked out of that before selling off. So we'll see if we push on higher. The next thing that we have to look for, should we reach that all-time high, is that double top. Now, about that all-time high, I think there's going to be something interesting that surrounds those all-time highs. And I think there's, well, first of all, near-term catalyst, Michigan consumer sentiment. I think that if that significantly degrades, that's going to be a mitigating factor to those all-time highs. If it stays pretty much the same, or if sentiment should improve, then that's something that I think could push us a little bit higher. I don't know that we're going to see that improvement, so we're going to have to watch and see. I'm a little bit doubtful. I think we're actually going to pull back a little bit on consumer sentiment. As long as it's not drastic, I don't think it's going to rattle the markets too much. I think the bigger thing is CPI next week. So I think that we could land near those all-time highs and sort of maybe trade sideways. We're going to have to see leading up to that CPI information. Now, I have said on an unadjusted basis that February, March is typically, historically, since the 2008 financial crisis, that's usually where we see a peak happen early in the early part of the year for the inflation numbers. So that means April is typically lower. It's not normally where we would find that peak. And so that's encouraging to think that we're going to get softer numbers. But I will say, given the increased energy prices that we've seen throughout April that are going on into May as well, I think that that is something that could be a mitigating factor for getting good numbers from the inflation reads coming out. So we're going to have to watch and see if we get softer numbers for April or not. I think that historically speaking, we should, but I think currently speaking, given what we know about those energy prices, that can really impact that headline number that we get. Even when we look at core prices, I think energy could bleed back through it. And that I will say that we could have seen a first quarter adjustment to prices. That would be something that wouldn't necessarily continue through April. So there is also reason for hope in the CPI as well. If we get favorable reads on that, if inflation seems to push down, that we are lower than what's expected, then that could really push markets into that new all-time high territory. So that is something we should absolutely be watching for the markets. And so that is coming up on May the 15th. I believe that's a Wednesday that's coming up for us, which, by the way, is 1 week before Nvidia earnings. With that said, let's go over to some of the stocks and crypto that I've been tracking. So Bitcoin's still trying not to give up here. Have a bit of an inverse head and shoulders look coming up here, where we have this shoulder, and we have this shoulder, and then we have this head right here, and then this top trend line, the bearish channel, could be that neckline. You can see we're still struggling to get over that 50 period, in this case the 50-day EMA, not making it over the 50-day SMA, which is in blue up here. If we go to the weekly chart, though, this becomes a little bit more interesting, because you see a lot of these long bottom wicks here, indicating that we keep on getting buying pressure coming in. So we'll see. We do have the 5 coming down, the 13 coming up. If the 5 should cross the 13 on the weekly basis for these exponential moving averages, then that is something that could be a bearish signal for us. We are losing momentum, but we are still in bullish territory as per the weekly chart. And if we go to the daily chart to see that momentum, we actually have rising momentum getting near that 50. We could possibly, if the markets are pushing on to new all-time highs, we could see Bitcoin also recover and break out of this neckline. And then where would we see the price going from there for Bitcoin, should that happen and take place? Well, let me go ahead and grab a trend line here. And what we're going to do is go from this trough that we have down here up to the height of that other shoulder, up to the neckline there. And I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to paste it. Boom, there we are. You grab a hold of that there. See if coordination keeps working out for us. Now, mind you, the longer this takes, if this takes longer, we drop down a little bit, but we could be back up around that 70,000 mark for Bitcoin if we break over the top of this trend line, and then we have some previous highs back in here to try and overtake. Now, mind you, that would be our first higher high that we saw. We didn't make it over this one that happened back at the end of April. We got close to it on May the 6th. And so far haven't made it there. So we'll see if this plays out for us. If we fail to break that trend line, we'll be heading back down. We're looking at mid to low 50s after that if we fail to break that trend line, especially if inflation reports exceed expectations to the upside on inflation, could push down further on risk assets and really push back those rate increases. So we need to be watchful for that. So Enphase is a stock that I've been tracking. And so far, like, again, this is a stock that if we get good CPI numbers, I think that you're going to see solar really jump. I think Enphase is one that I know that I'm a long-term investor, but I think it is one that could really jump for us and break the top of this consolidation pattern that we find ourselves in, and that we could really see that finally, that golden cross moment that we got cheated out of back in February. We got cheated again back in April, and then right now the 50 and the 200 period, which are the blue and the yellow that you see in here, these thin blue and yellow lines. Just, we keep on getting rejected right at the 200-day, and I think a good inflation report for the CPI is going to push us up higher. If we get one that comes in hot, that gets higher than expected, then I think we could possibly push down to this trend line, see that $100 price tag, possibly even push lower, depending on what we get from that. So let's move over into Tesla. Tesla's dancing around its 50-day simple moving average. We have a 5 over 50 cross for the exponential moving average, so near-term price action, relatively bearish for us. We're right at the 50 pretty much, 49.38 for the RSI on the daily chart on Tesla. We need to watch and see for that to, as we dance around that. This is another one where good CPI numbers could kick us back up. I wouldn't be surprised if we trade sideways or trade near that 50 period simple moving average over that time between now and next Wednesday. And then depending on the results of that CPI, I think Tesla's going to move massively one way or the other, depending on that read that we get. So Nvidia, there's my stock price prediction, still rocking $1,000. And right now, it looks like we're still hovering right around that $900 mark, especially in pre-market hours. But we keep on seeing different companies that are AI related, even infrastructure plays that are reporting kind of soft guidance on this. And we'll see if Nvidia falls into that, because there's a potential that it does. It is above the 50-day. It is above the 200-day, but it is sort of struggling going all the way back to March the 8th, where we peaked out for the first time, and then at the end of March, peaked out again, and then sold off significantly from there. Had some incredible appreciation back up over the 50 period. If the market does go back to all-time highs, then especially with the inflation report, if that's something that comes in soft, which I think is critical to the market, exceeding those all-time highs that we have and continuing upward. If the markets do that, then that helps us get to that $1,000 stock price prediction that I have here, either leading up to or just after earnings. So guys, those are my thoughts on the markets. Be watchful for Michigan consumer sentiment today at 10 a.m. Also, be on the lookout for CPI on May the 15th. That's going to be critical to the markets. That's one of the biggest catalysts that we have coming up in the near term. Absolutely critical that we watch for that. And you know how I'm going to play Enphase and Tesla based on those results that we get, especially if they're far away to the upside or downside from inflation expectations. So thank you guys for watching. I really do appreciate it. Find the link down in the description for the Patreon. Come over and join me and my community members, see my buys and sells, and then also find the link for that technical analysis trading course and take your trading game to the next level. As always, guys, thank you for watching. I am Dr. Stock, Doctor of Education. Remember, my friends, that learning is earning. I will see you in the next video.